I never thought I'd be the kind of mother-in-law who snooped. That wasn't who I raised myself to be. But standing at my kitchen window that Tuesday afternoon, watching smoke curl up from our backyard fire pit in the middle of the day, something in my gut twisted. Jennifer was supposed to be at work. My son Marcus was at the office. And there she was, feeding papers into the flames like her life depended on it. Let me back up. My name is Patricia Holloway, and for the past 62 years, I've tried to mind my own business. I raised 3 kids mostly on my own after my husband Daniel passed when Marcus was only 12. I worked 2 jobs, kept food on the table, and taught my children that honesty and hard work were the only currencies that mattered in this world. Marcus grew up to be a good man, a successful architect with his own firm, married to Jennifer for 7 years now. They lived in the house next door to mine, which Marcus built himself. That proximity was supposed to be a blessing. But lately, something had been off. I'd catch Jennifer staring into space during our Sunday dinners, her fork hovering over her plate like she'd forgotten what food was for. Marcus would ask her a question, and she'd snap back to reality with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. My son would look at me across the table with this helpless expression, and I'd shrug because what could I say? Marriage is hard sometimes. People go through phases, except this felt different. This felt like watching someone drowning in slow motion. So there I stood, dish towel in my hands, watching my daughter-in-law commit what looked like arson in broad daylight. The rational part of my brain said to call out to her, ask if everything was okay. The other part, the part that had kept my family alive through poverty and grief and every curveball life threw at us, told me to watch, to wait, to see. Jennifer's movements were frantic. She'd pull papers from a cardboard box, barely glance at them, and shove them into the fire. The wind caught a few loose sheets, sending them skittering across the grass. She chased after them like a woman possessed, grabbed them, and threw them into the flames. Her hair, usually pulled back in that neat ponytail she wore, hung loose around her shoulders. Even from my window, I could see her hands shaking. I set down my dish towel and moved toward the back door. My knees weren't what they used to be, and the stairs creaked under my weight, but I made it down to the yard without her noticing. The smoke was thicker now, acrid and dark. Not the clean smell of burning wood, but something chemical, something that made my eyes water. "Jennifer," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing?" She spun around so fast she nearly fell into the fire pit. Her face was streaked with soot and something else that might have been tears. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, weighing whether to lie or run or maybe just break down completely. "Patricia," she said, and her voice cracked on my name. "I didn't hear you come out." I walked closer, slow and careful like approaching a spooked horse. The box beside her was maybe half empty. I could see the edges of more papers inside, some with official-looking letterheads, others that looked like photographs. "What are you burning, Jennifer?" She laughed, and it was the saddest sound I'd ever heard. "Nothing important, just some old paperwork. Spring cleaning, you know?" I didn't know. Nobody did spring cleaning in October, and nobody burned paperwork in their backyard when shredders cost $20 at the office supply store. I reached for the box, but she pulled it away, hugging it to her chest like I was trying to steal her last possession on earth. "Please don't," she whispered. "Please just go inside and pretend you didn't see this." "I'm not good at pretending," I told her. "Never have been. Now you can either tell me what's going on, or I can call Marcus right now, and we can all have this conversation together." The mention of my son's name made her flinch. Her grip on the box loosened just enough. In that moment, I saw what was inside. Medical records, hospital bills, prescription bottles, and underneath it all, photographs. Dozens of them. A younger Jennifer, maybe 19 or 20, holding a baby. My heart stopped. I reached in before she could stop me and pulled out one of the photos. The baby couldn't have been more than a few months old, wrapped in a blue blanket with dark eyes that looked straight at the camera. Jennifer in the photo looked exhausted but happy, the way new mothers do when they're too tired to be anything but honest. "Jennifer?" I said slowly. "Who is this?" She collapsed. There's no other word for it. Her legs just gave out, and she sat down hard on the grass, still clutching that box. The fire crackled beside us, consuming whatever secrets she'd already fed it. I lowered myself down beside her, my knees protesting, and waited. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is just sit with them in their mess. His name was Daniel, she finally said. After your husband. Marcus told me stories about him, about how kind he was, how he made Marcus feel safe even when things were hard. I wanted my son to have that same strength. Son. The word hung in the air between us like smoke. Marcus didn't have a son. We didn't have a grandson. Unless... I was 18, Jennifer continued, staring at the photo in my hands. Freshman year of college. I met this guy at a party, thought I was in love, thought he was the one. 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. He disappeared before I even told him. Just stopped answering calls, blocked me on everything, like I never existed. The fire popped, sending sparks into the afternoon air. I wanted to say something, anything. But I knew if I interrupted now, she might never finish. My parents gave me 2 choices, abortion or adoption. They were very clear that raising the baby wasn't an option. They had plans for me, they said. College, career, a good marriage someday to someone suitable. A baby at 18 wasn't part of that plan. So I carried him for 9 months, gave birth to him in a hospital 3 states away where nobody knew us, and signed the papers. They told me it was a closed adoption, that I'd never see him again, never know what happened to him, that it was better that way. A closed adoption, I repeated. Jennifer, when was this? 14 years ago, she said. April 17th. The day I became a mother and lost my child in the same breath. The math clicked into place. Jennifer was 32 now. She'd been 18 when Daniel was born. She'd met Marcus when she was 25, married him at 26. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of family dinners and holidays and conversations about maybe having kids someday. And all that time, she'd been carrying this secret like a stone in her chest. Does Marcus know? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. How do I tell him? How do I explain that I've been lying since the day we met? Every time he talks about wanting to start a family, every time your other kids bring their children over and he lights up around them, I see Daniel's face. I wonder where he is, if he's happy, if he ever thinks about me. And I can't tell Marcus any of it. Because what if he looks at me differently? What if he can't forgive me for not trusting him with the truth? The fire was dying down now, reduced to embers and ash. I looked at the box, at all the evidence of a life Jennifer had tried to erase. Hospital bracelets, ultrasound photos. A single blue bootie that looked hand-knitted. A journal with worn edges, probably filled with thoughts she'd never spoken aloud. And underneath it all, more papers with official seals and signatures. I pulled out one of the documents. It was from an adoption agency, dated 14 years ago. A letter addressed to Jennifer at her parents' address, confirming the placement of a male infant with an adoptive family. The names of the adoptive parents were redacted, but there was a case number, a file number, a trail that could potentially be followed. Jennifer, I said carefully, why now? Why are you burning all this today? She wiped her face with the back of her hand, leaving a smear of ash across her cheek. I got a letter 2 weeks ago, from the adoption agency. They have this program now, some kind of registry where biological parents and adopted children can connect if both parties consent. Daniel turned 14 last month. The agency said he'd registered. He wants to meet me. The weight of that statement settled over us like snow. A 14-year-old boy, growing up somewhere out there, wondering about the woman who gave birth to him. And Jennifer, terrified of what reaching back might cost her. And you were going to burn all of this and pretend it never happened, I said. Pretend he never happened. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I can't do it, Patricia. I can't open that door. What if he hates me? What if he asks why I gave him up and I have to tell him the truth, that my parents made me choose and I was too weak to fight for him? What if Marcus finds out and realizes I'm not who he thought I was? I reached over and took her hand. It was cold despite the heat from the dying fire. Listen to me, I said. I lost my husband when my children still needed him. I know what it's like to live with regret, to wonder if you made the right choices, to carry guilt that isn't entirely yours to carry. But I also know that secrets have a way of poisoning everything they touch. You can burn these papers, but you can't burn the truth. It'll still be there, eating at you every single day. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I'm so scared. I know, sweetheart, but you're not alone in this. not anymore. We sat there in the grass for a long time, watching the last of the fire die. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful and terrible at the same time, the way important moments always are. Finally, I stood up, bones creaking, and offered her my hand. Come inside. We'll make some tea. And then you're going to call Marcus and tell him to come home early, because whatever happens next, you don't face it alone. She looked up at me with those red-rimmed eyes. What if he leaves me? Then he's not the man I raised, I said firmly. And I'll tell him so myself. We walked back to my house together, leaving the fire pit smoking behind us. I saved what was left in the box, carrying it like it contained something precious. Because it did. It contained 14 years of love and grief and hope, all mixed together in a way that couldn't be untangled. Inside, I put the kettle on while Jennifer washed her face in the bathroom. I could hear her crying through the door, those deep, wrenching sobs that come when you finally let yourself feel something you've been holding back for too long. I didn't interrupt. Some things you have to cry out before you can move forward. When she emerged, face scrubbed clean but eyes still swollen, I handed her a cup of chamomile tea and pointed to the kitchen table. She sat. I sat across from her, the way I'd sat across from my own children 1,000 times when they needed to confess something or ask for advice or just be seen. Tell me about him, I said. Not the adoption, not the secret. Tell me about Daniel. What did he look like? What did you feel when you held him? And she did. For the next hour, Jennifer talked. She told me about the 23 hours of labor, about how scared she'd been, how alone. She told me about the moment they placed Daniel in her arms, how he'd stopped crying instantly and just looked at her with those dark, serious eyes. She told me about the 2 days she got to spend with him before the adoptive parents arrived, how she'd memorized every detail of his face, the way his tiny fingers curled around hers, the sound of his breathing when he slept. She told me about naming him after my Daniel, even though the adoptive parents would probably change it. She told me about the goodbye, how the social worker had to physically take him from her arms because she couldn't make herself let go. She told me about the drive back to her parents' house in silence, how her mother told her she'd done the right thing and she'd forget in time, and how Jennifer knew even then that was a lie. You don't forget your child. You just learn to live with the empty space where they should be. By the time Marcus's car pulled into the driveway next door, the tea was cold and the sun had set completely. Jennifer's hand started shaking again when she heard his footsteps on the porch. You can do this, I told her. You have to do this. She nodded, standing up on unsteady legs. I'll come with you, I offered, but she shook her head. No, this is something I need to do alone. But Patricia, thank you, for not judging me, for not running away. I pulled her into a hug, this woman who'd been my daughter-in-law for 7 years but who I was only really meeting now. Your family, I said. That means something in this house. It means we show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She walked out of my kitchen and across the yard to her own house. I watched through the window as Marcus opened the door, smiling at her, then frowning when he saw her face. He pulled her inside, and the door closed behind them. I didn't sleep that night. I kept waiting for Marcus to come storming over, angry or hurt, or both. Kept expecting to hear raised voices through the walls. But there was only silence, the kind that could mean anything. At 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Marcus. Mom, he said, and his voice was rough. Can you come over? I threw on my robe and walked across the yard in my slippers. The grass was damp with dew, cold against my feet. Their front door was unlocked. I let myself in. They were sitting together on the couch, Marcus with his arm around Jennifer, both of them looking exhausted. The coffee table was covered with papers from the box, photos, documents, medical records, all the evidence of Jennifer's past spread out like pieces of a puzzle. Marcus looked up at me and I couldn't read his expression. Then he said, Did you know? Not until today, I told him. I saw her burning papers in the backyard. I stopped her. She told me everything. He nodded slowly. She told me you said that secrets poison everything. I did say that. I believe it. You're right, he said. He looked at Jennifer, and the expression on his face was so tender it made my chest ache. You should have told me years ago. But I understand why you didn't. I understand being scared of losing something precious. Jennifer was crying again, but quietly this time. Relieved tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I lied." "You didn't lie," Marcus said. "You just held on to something too heavy to carry alone. But you're not alone anymore. You've never been alone, not since the day we met. I just wish you'd known that sooner." I sat down in the armchair across from them, watching my son comfort his wife. This was the man I'd raised, the one who'd learned about kindness from his father and about strength from surviving loss. I'd done something right after all. "What happens now?" I asked. Marcus picked up the letter from the adoption agency. "Jennifer showed me this. Daniel wants to meet her. To meet us. And we write back," Marcus said simply. "We tell him yes. We tell him his birth mother has been thinking about him every day for 14 years. We tell him he has a family here whenever he's ready to meet us." Jennifer made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "What if he doesn't like me? What if he thinks I abandoned him?" "Then we tell him the truth," Marcus said. "That you were 18 and scared and did what you thought was best for him. That you never stopped loving him. That every decision you made came from wanting him to have a better life than you could give him then. And if he needs time to process that, we give him time. If he needs space, we give him space. But we don't run away, not from this." I watched my son become a father in that moment, even though the child in question was 14 years old and living with another family. He was choosing to step into this complicated, messy situation with open arms. That's what love looks like when it's real. It's not perfect or easy. It's showing up anyway. The next few weeks were strange. Jennifer and Marcus worked together to write a letter to Daniel through the agency. They agonized over every word, trying to strike the right balance between honest and hopeful. I read draft after draft, offering suggestions, making sure they didn't promise too much or explain too little. I remember one particular evening when they came over with the 7th version of the letter. Marcus sat at my kitchen table with his head in his hands while Jennifer paced back and forth, reading sentences aloud and then crossing them out. "Does this sound too desperate?" she asked, pointing to a paragraph. "Or this part? Does it sound like I'm making excuses?" "It sounds like you're being honest," I told her. "That's all you can do." "But what if honest isn't enough? What if he reads this and thinks I'm just trying to ease my guilt? What if he thinks I don't really care about him, just about making myself feel better?" Marcus looked up at her. "Jen, we've been working on this letter for 3 weeks. At some point, you have to trust that your words will land the way you mean them. And if they don't, we'll clarify. But we can't keep rewriting forever." She stopped pacing and looked at both of us. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "What if he says no? What if the agency calls and says he changed his mind, that he doesn't want to meet me after all?" "Then we'll deal with that," Marcus said firmly. "But right now, we're borrowing trouble from a future that hasn't happened yet. Let's just send the letter and see what comes back." Jennifer sat down at the table and read through the letter one more time. It was beautiful, really. She'd told Daniel about being young and scared, about making impossible choices with limited options. She'd told him about thinking of him every birthday, every holiday, every random Tuesday when something would remind her of what she'd lost. She'd told him that meeting him would be a gift she never thought she'd receive, but that she understood if he needed time or space or nothing at all. She'd told him she loved him then and loved him now, across all the years and distance and silence. "This is it," she finally said. "This is what I want to say." "Then let's send it," Marcus said. They mailed the letter the next day. And then came the waiting. Those weeks felt endless. Jennifer jumped every time the phone rang. She checked the mailbox 3 times a day, even though mail only came once. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly, couldn't focus on anything else. I tried to keep her occupied. We went to lunch, saw movies, worked in the garden together. I told her stories about Marcus as a baby, hoping it would help her imagine Daniel at that age, connect past and present in some way. Marcus took time off work to be with her, canceling meetings and rescheduling appointments because he knew she needed him home. During this time, Jennifer made a decision that surprised me. She called her mother. I was at her house when she did it, and I heard her end of the conversation even though I tried not to eavesdrop. "Mom, it's me," Jennifer said into the phone. Her voice was steady but cold. "I need to tell you something. I've made contact with Daniel, the boy I gave birth to 14 years ago. The one you made me give up. There was a long pause while her mother responded. No, I'm not asking your permission, Jennifer continued. I'm telling you as a courtesy. He wants to meet me, and I'm going to meet him. With Marcus. My husband knows everything now, and he's supportive. So you can either be happy for me, or you can continue pretending it never happened. But I'm done hiding. Another pause. That's your choice, Mom. But you should know that you have a grandson. A wonderful, smart, curious grandson who survived just fine without your approval or mine, and I'm going to know him, with or without your blessing. Goodbye. She hung up and stood there for a moment, staring at the phone. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes. I just told my mother off, she said, sounding amazed. I actually did it. How does it feel? I asked. Like I should have done it 14 years ago. She wiped her eyes. She said I was being selfish, that I'd agreed to a closed adoption, and I should honor that agreement. That opening this door would only hurt everyone involved. Do you believe that? No, Jennifer said firmly. I believe that I made the best choice I could at 18 with the information and support I had, which was basically none. I believe that circumstances change and people grow, and sometimes we get second chances we don't deserve but should take anyway. And I believe my mother has been wrong about a lot of things for a very long time. Marcus came into the room then. He'd been in his office working but must have heard the conversation. He wrapped his arms around Jennifer and held her while she cried. Not sad tears this time, but releasing tears. Letting go of years of trying to please parents who'd never been pleased, never been satisfied, never been truly present for her. After that phone call, something shifted in Jennifer. She stood taller, spoke more confidently, started making decisions without second-guessing herself into paralysis. It was like telling her mother the truth had unlocked something inside her, permission to take up space and make noise and matter. She threw herself into therapy with new intensity. Found a counselor who specialized in adoption trauma and post-traumatic stress. Dr. Reynolds was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that Jennifer responded to immediately. I went to one session with Jennifer at her request. Dr. Reynolds wanted to understand the family dynamics, see how we all interacted. She asked me about my relationship with Jennifer, how I'd reacted when I found out about Daniel, what my hopes were for the future. I want Jennifer to be happy, I told her honestly. I want my son to have the partner he deserves, someone who trusts him enough to be vulnerable. And I want Daniel to have as many people loving him as possible. That kid deserves the world. Do you have concerns? Dr. Reynolds asked. Sure, I admitted. I worry that Daniel's adoptive parents might feel threatened. I worry that Jennifer's building up expectations that reality can't meet. I worry that Marcus is so focused on supporting Jennifer that he's not processing his own feelings about all this. But mostly I worry that we'll all try so hard to make this perfect that we'll forget to just be real with each other. Dr. Reynolds smiled. Those are very wise concerns, Patricia. And the fact that you're thinking about them means you're probably going to navigate this better than most families would. Jennifer squeezed my hand. I don't know what I'd do without her, she said. She's been my rock through all of this. Marcus went to sessions too, sometimes with Jennifer and sometimes alone. He needed to process his own feelings about the revelation, about 7 years of marriage built on an incomplete truth. He wasn't angry, he told me over coffee one morning, but he was hurt that Jennifer hadn't felt safe enough to tell him sooner. I keep thinking about all the times we talked about having kids, he said. All the times she'd get this look on her face, like she was somewhere else. And I'd ask what she was thinking and she'd say nothing important. She was thinking about Daniel, about the son she had and lost. And she couldn't tell me. Why do you think that was? I asked. He stirred his coffee absently. Fear, I guess. Fear that I'd judge her or leave her or think less of her. Which kills me because I've never given her reason to think that. Have I? No, sweetheart. You've been nothing but loving to that woman from day one. But fear isn't rational. Jennifer's parents taught her that shame was the appropriate response to her situation, that silence was safety. Unlearning that takes time. Dr. Reynolds says the same thing, Marcus admitted. She says Jennifer's been in survival mode for so long that she doesn't know how to exist any other way, that we're all learning a new normal together. He was quiet for a moment, then said, Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think less of Jennifer? Knowing what you know now? I looked at my son, This good man I'd raised, and chose my words carefully. I think more of her, I said. It takes incredible strength to carry a secret that heavy for that long. It takes even more strength to finally let it go. Jennifer made an impossible choice at 18, and she's been punishing herself for it ever since. I don't think less of her. I admire her for surviving it. Marcus's eyes were wet. I love her so much, Mom, and I want to make this right for her. But I don't know how. You're already doing it, I assured him. You're showing up. You're listening. You're not running away. That's what she needs most. Just you, being exactly who you are. I watched my daughter-in-law transform before my eyes over those weeks of waiting. It wasn't a sudden change, more like ice melting in spring. Gradual but inevitable. She started smiling more. Real smiles that lit up her whole face. She talked about Daniel openly now, sharing memories she'd kept locked away. One afternoon, we were sitting on my back porch drinking lemonade when she told me about the 2 days in the hospital. I'd held him, she said quietly, and it was like every cell in my body knew he was mine. People talk about maternal instinct like it's this vague feeling, but it wasn't vague at all. It was the most certain thing I'd ever experienced. This is my child. This is the person I'm supposed to protect and love and raise. What happened when they came to take him? I asked gently. She was quiet for a long time. The social worker was very kind, she finally said. She gave me 2 full days, which was more than the agreement stipulated. She let me feed him and change him and just hold him. On the last day, she came into my room and said it was time. The adoptive parents were waiting. Jennifer's hands were shaking around her glass. I knew I had to do it. I knew I'd signed the papers and made the commitment and that Daniel deserved parents who were ready and able to care for him properly. But when she reached for him, my arms wouldn't let go. Physically wouldn't release him. She had to pry him out of my grip while I sobbed. "Oh, honey," I whispered. The worst part was that he was crying too. He'd been so calm in my arms, but the moment the social worker took him, he started wailing. Like he knew. Like even at 3 days old, he understood that something fundamental was being broken. I can still hear that sound in my nightmares. We sat together in silence, both of us crying now. Sometimes there are no words that help. Sometimes you just have to witness someone's pain and let them know they're not alone in it. "Did you get to say goodbye?" I asked. Jennifer nodded. I kissed his forehead and told him I loved him. Told him he was going to have a wonderful life with people who were ready to give him everything I couldn't. Told him that if there was any way for the universe to let him know, years from now, that his birth mother never stopped thinking about him, I hoped it would. And then she walked out with him, and I was alone. How did you survive that? Barely, Jennifer said honestly. I went back to my parents' house, and they expected me to just move on. Pack up my things, go back to college, pretend nothing had happened. My mother kept saying I'd feel better in time, that this grief would fade. But it didn't fade. It just learned to hide better. She looked at me with those sad, wise eyes. You know what the hardest part has been? All these years? Watching Marcus with other people's kids. He's so good with them, so natural. And I'd think about Daniel. Wonder if Marcus would be that good with him, too. Wonder if I'd robbed my son of having Marcus as a father because I was too scared to tell the truth. You didn't rob anyone of anything, I said firmly. You made the best choice you could with the options you had. And now Daniel has 2 sets of parents who love him. That's not a tragedy. That's a gift. I hope he sees it that way, Jennifer whispered. She even reached out to her parents again, though that conversation didn't go well. They still believed she'd made the right choice and saw no reason to revisit the past. Her father barely spoke during the call. Her mother reiterated that bringing Daniel into their lives now would only complicate things unnecessarily. You have a good life with Marcus, her mother said. Why risk that for someone who's essentially a stranger? He's not a stranger, Jennifer had replied, her voice trembling with anger. He's my son. And the fact that you can't understand that tells me everything I need to know about why I never felt safe telling you anything real. She'd hung up shortly after that and cried for an hour straight. But when she was done crying, she seemed lighter. Like she'd finally accepted that her parents were never going to give her the support she needed. And that was okay. She had Marcus. She had me. She had Dr. Reynolds. She had enough. Jennifer decided she could live with their disapproval. She'd been doing it for 14 years already, she told me. What's a few more? During this waiting period, Jennifer also started planning for the future. She looked into going back to school, finishing the degree she'd abandoned when she got pregnant. She'd been studying education, had wanted to be a teacher before everything fell apart. Marcus encouraged her, said they'd make it work financially, that her dreams mattered too. I watched her research programs online, saw the excitement building in her eyes as she imagined a future where she was more than just Marcus's wife or someone's daughter-in-law, where she was Jennifer, a whole person with goals and ambitions, and a story that included both joy and heartbreak. 6 weeks after they sent the letter, the agency called. Jennifer was at work when her phone rang, and she nearly dropped it when she saw the number. She called me immediately after, her voice shaking. Patricia, he wrote back. Daniel wrote back. They want to set up a meeting. What did he say? I asked. She was crying too hard to answer at first. When she finally composed herself, she read me parts of his letter. He'd written that he'd always wondered about his birth mother, always felt like there was a piece of his story missing. That his parents, Michael and Susan, had been honest with him about being adopted from the time he was old enough to understand. That they'd encouraged him to reach out when he turned 14 if he wanted to. He sounds like a thoughtful kid, I said. He is. Oh God, Patricia, he is. He wrote about playing soccer and loving to draw. He asked questions about medical history and what I look like and if I have other children. He wants to know me. That's wonderful, sweetheart. But what if I disappoint him? What if he meets me and realizes I'm just this ordinary person who made a huge mistake and couldn't fix it? What if he expects someone extraordinary and gets me instead? Jennifer, I said firmly, you are extraordinary. You survived something that would have broken most people. You built a life despite carrying this weight. And you're brave enough to face him now, to be honest and vulnerable and real. That's more than most people ever manage. The agency suggested meeting in a neutral location. Michael and Susan wanted to be there for the first meeting, which both Jennifer and Marcus agreed was appropriate. They settled on a park about halfway between our town and where Daniel lived, a place with picnic tables and walking trails and enough space that nobody would feel trapped. Jennifer spent the next 3 days in a state of controlled panic. She'd be fine for an hour, then suddenly burst into tears. She changed her outfit 17 times the morning of the meeting. First, she wore a dress, then decided it was too formal. Jeans felt too casual. A nice blouse and slacks seemed trying too hard. She finally settled on jeans and a soft blue sweater that Marcus said brought out her eyes. She couldn't eat breakfast. I'd made pancakes her favorite, but she just pushed them around her plate. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her fork. Marcus sat beside her, rubbing her back, telling her it would be okay, but even he looked pale. What do I say to him? Jennifer asked for the 100th time. How do I explain 14 years in one conversation? You don't, Marcus said gently. You just start. You say hi, you answer his questions honestly, and you remember that this is just the beginning. You don't have to get it perfect today. But what if there isn't a second chance? What if I mess this up and he decides he doesn't want to see me again? Then we'll deal with that, I interjected. But borrowing trouble from a future that hasn't happened yet won't help. Right now, focus on getting through today. One moment at a time. I went with them. They'd asked me to come, said having me there would help them feel stronger. Jennifer held my hand in the back seat of the car during the 40-minute drive, squeezing so hard I lost feeling in my fingers. Marcus drove in silence, his jaw clenched, occasionally reaching back to touch Jennifer's knee. When we pulled into the park, Jennifer nearly had a full panic attack. She couldn't breathe right, couldn't stop crying. Marcus pulled over in the parking lot and held her while she hyperventilated into a paper bag I'd brought just in case. I can't do this, she gasped. I can't. What was I thinking? This is a terrible idea. Look at me, Marcus said, tilting her face up to his. You can do this. You've been preparing for this moment for 14 years, even when you didn't know it. And whatever happens today, I'm right here. Mom's right here. You're not alone. What if he hates me? Then we'll deal with that too. But you'll never know unless you try. And I think you'll regret not trying more than you could ever regret whatever happens in there. Jennifer took several deep breaths, wiped her face, and nodded. Okay, I can do this. We got out of the car and started walking toward the picnic area. The park was beautiful that day. Early autumn sun filtering through trees just starting to turn colors. Families were scattered around, kids on playgrounds, couples walking dogs. Normal people having normal days while Jennifer walked toward the most important moment of her life. So I put on my best dress and drove them to the park where Daniel and his family would be waiting. We saw them from across the lawn. A tall teenage boy with dark hair and eyes that looked familiar, standing between a middle-aged couple who both had kind faces. Daniel was wearing jeans and a blue hoodie, hands shoved in his pockets, looking as nervous as Jennifer. His adoptive mother, Susan, had her hand on his shoulder. His father, Michael, stood slightly behind them, protective but not hovering. Jennifer stopped walking about 20 feet away. She'd frozen, staring at this boy who had her eyes and her chin, and apparently Marcus's father's name. I could see her trying to reconcile the baby she'd held 14 years ago with the young man standing in front of her now. "That's him," she whispered. "That's really him." "Go on," I urged gently. "He's waiting for you." As we walked toward them, Jennifer's hand tightened around Marcus's. Her breathing was quick and shallow. She looked like she might bolt at any second. But she kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until we were maybe 10 feet away. Daniel looked up. His eyes met Jennifer's, and for a moment, nobody moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then his face broke into this tentative smile, uncertain but hopeful. "Hi," he said. His voice was deeper than I expected, already changing. "Are you Jennifer?" My daughter-in-law nodded, unable to speak. Tears were streaming down her face, but she was smiling too. "That's me," she finally managed. "I'm Jennifer, and this is Marcus, my husband, and Patricia, my mother-in-law." Daniel's adoptive parents introduced themselves. Michael was tall and solid-looking, with graying hair and laugh lines around his eyes. Susan was smaller, with a warm smile and kind eyes that reminded me of myself. She stepped forward and gave Jennifer a gentle hug. "We're so glad you agreed to meet," Susan said. "Daniel's been looking forward to this for weeks. We all have, actually." "Thank you," Jennifer said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for raising him, for loving him, for letting him do this." "He's our son," Michael said simply. "We want him to have all the information he needs about where he came from. You're part of his story, and we're grateful you're willing to share it with him." We all found a picnic table and sat down, awkward and uncertain. For a few minutes, nobody knew what to say. Daniel kept glancing at Jennifer, then looking away. Jennifer kept trying to speak, then stopping. Marcus held her hand under the table. I tried to project calm and support, though inside I was nervous too. Then Daniel pulled out a notebook from his backpack. "I made a list of questions," he said, looking embarrassed. "Is that weird?" "I just didn't want to forget anything." "It's not weird at all," Jennifer assured him. "Ask me anything. I'll answer as honestly as I can." And he did. For the next 2 hours, Daniel asked questions. Why did she give him up? Did she think about him? What was she like when she was his age? Did she have any medical history he should know about? Was he named after someone? Did she ever try to find him before now? Jennifer answered every single question. She told him about being 18 and scared, about her parents' ultimatum, about holding him for 2 days and memorizing his face, about choosing a closed adoption because open ones weren't really available then, and how she'd regretted that decision for 14 years, about naming him after Marcus's father, a man who taught her husband everything about being strong and kind. When Daniel asked about his biological father, Jennifer was honest. "He was a boy I dated briefly in college," she said. "When I told him I was pregnant, he stopped answering my calls. I tried to reach out several times, but he'd completely cut me off. I don't know where he is now or if he even knows you exist." "Do you know his name?" Daniel asked. "I do. But I need to think about whether sharing that information is the right thing to do right now. Not because I want to hide it from you, but because I want to make sure that if you decide to look for him, you're prepared for what you might find. Or not find." "That's fair," Daniel said, and I was impressed by his maturity. She told Daniel that not a day had passed without her thinking about him, that she'd wondered on every birthday what he looked like, what he liked, if he was happy, that giving him up was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but she'd truly believed it was what he needed, that she'd always loved him, even when she couldn't be with him. I used to go to parks sometimes, Jennifer admitted, tears streaming down her face, and watch kids around the age you would have been. I'd imagine you playing on the swings or climbing on the jungle gym. I'd make up stories about what kind of child you were. Quiet or loud, shy or outgoing. I had no way of knowing, but I couldn't stop myself from imagining. Daniel was quiet, processing this. Then he said, I'm kind of loud, and definitely not shy. Just so you know. Everyone laughed, and the tension broke a little. Daniel listened to all of it. Sometimes he'd write something in his notebook. Sometimes he'd look over at his parents, who would nod encouragingly. And sometimes he'd just stare at Jennifer like he was trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the idea he'd built in his head. Susan and Michael shared stories too. They told us about the day they brought Daniel home from the hospital, how he'd cried the entire car ride and then fallen asleep the moment Susan held him. About his first steps, taken toward a soccer ball at 10 months old. About how he'd always been curious and creative, filling notebooks with drawings and questions about everything. He asked us where babies came from when he was 4, Michael said with a laugh, and we knew we had to tell him the truth about adoption sooner rather than later. We'd always planned to be honest with him. How did you explain it? Marcus asked. Susan smiled. We told him that some families are made with babies growing in mommy's tummy, and some families are made when parents choose a baby to love. That he grew in someone else's tummy but was always meant to be ours. As he got older, we filled in more details. By the time he was 8, he knew the full story. Did you ever feel different? Jennifer asked Daniel. Growing up knowing you were adopted? Daniel shrugged. Sometimes, mostly when kids at school would talk about looking like their parents or inheriting traits. I'd wonder what traits came from you. What came from my biological father. But Mom and Dad never made me feel like I wasn't really theirs. They just were honest that there were other people out there who were part of my story too. Finally, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. Do you regret it? Giving me up? Jennifer didn't hesitate. Every single day, she said. Not because you didn't have a good life. Your parents seem wonderful, and I'm so grateful you had them. But yes, I regret not being able to raise you myself. I regret missing your first steps, your first words, your first day of school. I regret all of it, even though I know the circumstances didn't really give me a choice. The honesty of her answer seemed to surprise Daniel. He looked at his parents, then back at Jennifer. Most people would try to make themselves feel better, he said. They'd say they did the right thing and it all worked out and they don't regret anything. I could say that, Jennifer replied. It would be easier. But it wouldn't be true. The truth is complicated and messy and uncomfortable. I made the best choice I could at the time with the resources and support I had. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. That doesn't mean I wouldn't change it if I could. What about now? Daniel asked. He was gripping his notebook so hard his knuckles were white. What do you want now? I want to know you, Jennifer said simply. As much as you're comfortable with. If you want me in your life as a friend or an aunt figure, or just someone you email occasionally, I'll take it. I don't expect to replace your parents. They raised you, they love you, they're your family. But if there's room for me too, in whatever capacity works for you, I'd really like that. Daniel looked at Michael and Susan. They both smiled at him. It's your choice, honey, Susan said. Whatever you decide, we support you. The boy was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him thinking, weighing, deciding. Then he said, I'd like that too. Getting to know you. Maybe we could start slow. Like, meet for lunch once a month or something? Jennifer nodded so hard I thought her head might fall off. That sounds perfect. Whatever you're comfortable with. We can go at whatever pace feels right for you. Marcus spoke up then. Daniel, I just want you to know that I'm here too. I know this is mostly about you and Jennifer, but I'm part of this family, and I'd like to get to know you as well. No pressure, just an open invitation. Daniel smiled at him. Thanks. I think that would be cool. Jennifer showed me your letter, the one you guys sent with hers. You seem like a really good person. I try to be, Marcus said. And your birth mom is the best person I know. So you come by it honestly. We talked for another hour. Daniel showed us photos on his phone of his life, school plays where he'd built sets because he liked woodworking, soccer games where he played midfielder because he liked running, family vacations to national parks because he loved being outdoors. He showed us drawings he'd made, detailed sketches of buildings and landscapes that showed real talent. "These are incredible," Marcus said, genuinely impressed. "Have you ever thought about architecture? Is that what you do?" Daniel asked. Marcus nodded. "I design buildings. It's like drawing, but in 3 dimensions, and then we figure out how to make them real." "That sounds amazing," Daniel said, his eyes lighting up. "Could you tell me more about it sometime?" "Absolutely. I'd love to." I told embarrassing stories about Marcus as a kid that made Daniel laugh. About the time Marcus tried to build a tree house when he was 12, and it collapsed the first time anyone tried to climb into it. About how he used to draw floor plans for imaginary houses on every scrap of paper he could find. About how his father, the first Daniel, had encouraged every creative impulse even when money was tight. "Your grandfather sounds like he was a great guy," Daniel said. "He was," I told him. "He died when Marcus was about your age. But he taught us all about resilience and kindness and showing up for people. I think he would have been proud to have you carry his name." Daniel ducked his head, embarrassed but pleased. "Thank you," he said quietly. Slowly, the awkwardness faded, replaced by something that felt almost comfortable. Not quite natural yet, but moving in that direction. We were all trying, all being careful with each other, all hoping this fragile new connection would hold. As we were getting ready to leave, Daniel asked if he could hug Jennifer. She said yes, her voice breaking, and wrapped her arms around this boy who was hers, but also not hers, who'd grown up without her, but was willing to let her into his life anyway. He was almost as tall as she was, gangly in that teenage way, and he hugged her tight for a long moment before pulling back. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "For being honest, for not pretending everything was easy or perfect." "Thank you for giving me the chance," Jennifer replied, "for being brave enough to reach out, for letting me be part of your story." Susan and Michael exchanged phone numbers with us, made plans to coordinate the next meeting. We all agreed to take it slow, let Daniel set the pace, check in regularly to make sure everyone was comfortable. It felt mature and thoughtful, and like maybe we could actually make this work. When we drove home, Jennifer was exhausted but lighter than I'd seen her in years. Maybe ever. She leaned against Marcus in the backseat of my car and said, "He's so amazing. They did such a good job with him." "They did," Marcus agreed. "But he got some pretty good genes, too." Over the following months, we settled into a new normal. Jennifer and Daniel met for lunch once a month, sometimes with Marcus and sometimes just the 2 of them. They texted occasionally. Nothing forced, nothing rushed. Just 2 people slowly building a relationship on their own terms. The first few lunches were awkward. They'd sit across from each other in restaurants, making small talk about school and work and weather. Safe topics that didn't require too much vulnerability. Daniel would tell her about soccer practice and art class. Jennifer would tell him about going back to college, about the education courses she was taking. They were dancing around the real stuff, feeling each other out, learning how to be in each other's presence. The breakthrough came during their 4th lunch. They were at a diner, picking at French fries, when Daniel suddenly said, "Do you ever wonder what it would have been like if you'd kept me?" Jennifer set down her fork carefully. "All the time," she admitted. "I imagine a completely different life. Me at 19 with a baby, struggling but figuring it out. You growing up knowing me from the beginning. All the moments I missed. But I try not to live in that alternate reality too much because it didn't happen, and dwelling on it doesn't help either of us move forward." "Do you think you would have been a good mom?" Daniel asked. "Like, back then?" Jennifer thought about this seriously. "Honestly, I don't know. I was so young and scared and had no support. I might have been terrible at it. Or I might have risen to the challenge. But your parents were ready. They were stable and mature and desperately wanted a child. They could give you things I couldn't. So maybe it worked out the way it was supposed to. But you still wish it had been different." "Of course I do. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. But wishing doesn't change reality. What I can change is right now. I can choose to know you now. To be honest with you now. To build something real with you from this point forward." After that conversation, things got easier. Daniel started opening up more, sharing things about his life that went beyond surface details. He told Jennifer about struggling with anxiety sometimes, about feeling pressure to be perfect because he knew his parents had waited so long for him. He told her about fights with friends, about a girl he liked but was too nervous to talk to, about feeling lost sometimes when he thought about the future. Jennifer shared too. She told him about her own struggles with anxiety and depression after the adoption, about years of therapy, about learning to forgive herself for choices she'd made at 18, about Marcus and how meeting him had been the first time she'd felt safe enough to consider building a real life again. Their text conversations evolved from simple check-ins to real exchanges. Daniel would send her photos of drawings he was working on. Jennifer would send him funny memes or articles about things they'd discussed. When Daniel had a big soccer game, Jennifer would text him good luck and he'd text back afterward with the score. When Jennifer had a particularly hard day at school, she'd text Daniel and he'd send back some silly joke that made her smile. Marcus joined them for lunch sometimes too. He and Daniel bonded over architecture and design. Marcus would show Daniel blueprints from projects he was working on, explain how buildings were engineered to be both beautiful and functional. Daniel would show Marcus his sketches, asking questions about perspective and structure. I watched their relationship develop with joy, seeing how naturally Marcus stepped into a mentoring role without trying to force anything. Daniel came to our house for Sunday dinner a few times. The first time was nerve-wracking for everyone. Jennifer cooked for 3 days straight, making enough food to feed 20 people. She was convinced everything would be a disaster, that Daniel would hate the food or feel uncomfortable, or decide he didn't want to come back. But Susan and Michael came too, and their presence helped. They were easy guests, warm and funny and genuine. Susan helped me set the table while Michael talked sports with Marcus. Daniel wandered around looking at family photos, asking questions about the people in them. "Is this your husband?" he asked me, pointing to a photo of Daniel Sr. "That's him," I said. "Taken about a year before he died. He was a good man. Would have loved to meet you." "Jennifer named me after him," Daniel said. "That's kind of amazing. Like he's still here in a way." "That's exactly right," I told him. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. We passed dishes around the table, talked over each other, laughed at stupid jokes. Daniel fit in naturally, trading sarcastic comments with Marcus, asking me questions about my life, complimenting Jennifer's cooking. By the end of the meal, it felt like he'd always been part of our family gatherings. The second time they came for dinner, Susan pulled me aside in the kitchen while we were cleaning up. "Thank you," she said, "for making us feel so welcome, for including us in this. It can't be easy." "It's not hard at all," I assured her. "You're part of Daniel's story, which makes you part of our story now too. Besides, I like you. You're good people." She smiled. "Jennifer's lucky to have you. I can see how much you support her. Not every mother-in-law would have handled this situation with so much grace." "I just did what needed to be done," I said. Jennifer needed someone to see her pain and not run from it, to stand with her while she figured out how to be brave. That's what family does. Over time, our Sunday dinners expanded. My other children started bringing their families. Daniel met his biological uncle and aunt, his cousins. At first, we worried it might be overwhelming, but Daniel handled it with surprising ease. He asked questions, shared stories, slowly found his place in our complicated family tree. One Sunday, my daughter Karen pulled me aside. "Mom," she said, "I have to admit, when Marcus first told me about all this, I was worried. I thought it would blow up the family, 'cause all kinds of drama. But watching Jennifer with Daniel, seeing how carefully everyone's navigating this, I'm amazed. You raised Marcus right. I didn't do it alone," I told her. His father taught him how to be strong and kind. Jennifer taught him how to be patient and understanding. And Daniel's teaching all of us that family can expand to include more love without diminishing what was already there. Jennifer continued therapy throughout all of this. Dr. Reynolds helped her work through complicated feelings about her parents, about Michael and Susan, about her own identity as both a birth mother and a woman without custody. It wasn't always easy. There were sessions where Jennifer came out looking wrung out and exhausted, but slowly I watched her make peace with her past. One afternoon, Jennifer came over for tea. Just the two of us, sitting on my back porch. She was quiet for a while, just sipping her chamomile and watching birds at the feeder. Then she said, "I never thanked you properly, Patricia." "For what?" I asked, though I knew. For that day, for seeing the smoke and coming outside, for not letting me destroy the evidence of Daniel's existence, for making me face the truth instead of running from it. I reached over and took her hand. You would have found your way eventually. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. Maybe. But maybe not. I was so close to burning it all, to pretending it never happened, to living the rest of my life with that weight. You saw me at my lowest moment, and you didn't judge me. You just helped. That's what family does, I said. We show up. We witness each other's pain. We help carry the weight when it gets too heavy. I'm so grateful, she whispered. For you, for Marcus, for the chance to know Daniel. For all of it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, because they taught me I was stronger than I thought. You are strong, I told her. You survived something that would have broken most people. You're still here, still fighting, still growing. That's extraordinary. She wiped her eyes. Dr. Reynolds says I'm finally learning to forgive myself, to accept that I was young and scared and did the best I could with the resources I had, that I don't have to carry guilt for choices that were made under duress. She's right, I said firmly. You were barely more than a child yourself. Your parents failed you. The system failed you. You made the only choice that seemed possible at the time. There's no shame in that. Jennifer also started going back to school, finishing the degree she'd abandoned when she got pregnant. It wasn't easy, juggling classes and homework with her job and her relationship with Daniel. But she was determined. Marcus supported her completely, adjusting his work schedule to accommodate her needs, helping her study, celebrating every small victory. I'm doing this for me, Jennifer told me one day, but also for Daniel. I want him to see that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, that mistakes don't define you forever, that you can rebuild your life at any age. He already sees that, I assured her, just by watching you. You're showing him what courage looks like. Marcus and Jennifer also started talking seriously about having another child. It was a complicated conversation, full of fears and hopes and uncertainties. Jennifer worried that another pregnancy would trigger memories of giving birth to Daniel. Marcus worried that the stress might be too much for Jennifer. They both worried about how Daniel would feel about a potential sibling. Finally, they asked Daniel directly. The three of them sat down together one Sunday afternoon, and Jennifer said, "We're thinking about having a baby, but we want to know how you'd feel about that." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Would it change things between us? Like, would you still want to know me if you had a kid you could actually raise?" "Always," Jennifer said firmly. "Nothing could change that. You're my son, Daniel. Maybe not in the legal sense, maybe not in the way society typically defines it, but in every way that matters. A baby wouldn't replace you or diminish my love for you. It would just mean more people in this family, more love to go around." "I think it would be cool," Daniel said finally. "Having a little brother or sister, kind of. Like, I wouldn't be their older brother exactly, but maybe something close. And it might be nice to see what a baby version of you and Marcus would look like." They decided to wait a bit longer, to let their relationship with Daniel stabilize more first. But the conversation opened doors, made possibilities feel real in a way they hadn't before. Through all of this, I watched Daniel transform too. He started calling more often, not just texting. He'd call Jennifer just to chat about his day, about something funny that happened at school, about problems he was working through. He'd call Marcus to ask about architecture programs, about what classes he should take in high school, about how to turn a hobby into a career. And he called me, usually on Sunday evenings, just checking in, telling me about his week, asking about mine, sharing jokes or stories or thoughts about whatever was on his mind. Slowly, without any of us really noticing it happen, he became woven into the fabric of our family. As for me, I watched my family expand in unexpected ways. I'd gained a grandson at 14 instead of at birth, but he was my grandson nonetheless. Daniel started calling me Grandma Patricia after about 6 months, shy and uncertain at first, then with more confidence. It made my heart sing every time. One evening, about a year after that first meeting, Jennifer and Marcus came over for dinner. It was just the three of us, a rare, quiet moment before Daniel and his parents arrived for dessert. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, when Jennifer said, "Patricia, I never thanked you properly." "For what?" I asked. "For stopping me that day. For making me face the truth instead of letting me burn it all away." If you'd let me destroy those papers, if you'd minded your own business like most people would have, I'd have thrown away my chance to know my son. I'd have lived with that regret forever. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That's what family does. We show up when it matters, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we're scared. Marcus put his arm around his wife. She's right, you know. Mom's been showing up for us our whole lives. Through every crisis, every celebration, every ordinary Tuesday. That's what she does. I felt my eyes getting misty. I'm just doing what my Daniel taught me, I said. He always said family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when things get hard, who stands beside you even when they don't understand, who loves you through the mess. Well, you taught us the same thing, Marcus said. And now we're teaching it to Daniel too. That family is complicated and imperfect and worth fighting for. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned purple, then dark. Inside, I could see the kitchen table set for dinner, places for 7 people. Daniel and his parents, Jennifer and Marcus, me. A family built from loss and secrets and second chances. When Daniel arrived with Susan and Michael, he ran up the porch steps and gave me a hug before going inside. Just a quick, casual embrace, the kind that said I belonged in his life now. It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything. Over dinner, we talked and laughed and passed dishes around the table. Susan told a funny story about Daniel's first soccer game. Marcus shared news about a project at work. Jennifer announced she'd been accepted back to college to finish her degree. Daniel showed me a drawing he'd made in art class, asking my opinion with genuine interest. It was ordinary. Beautifully, perfectly ordinary. The kind of evening I'd dreamed about when my kids were young and life was hard and I wasn't sure we'd make it. The kind of evening that only exists because people chose to be brave, to tell the truth, to show up for each other even when it hurt. After everyone left and I was cleaning up the kitchen, I found a note on the counter. It was from Jennifer, written on the back of a napkin in her neat handwriting. Patricia, it said, thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to come home to yourself. That secrets don't protect us, they imprison us. That family means showing up, being honest, and loving people through their mistakes. You saved my life that day in the backyard. I'll spend the rest of mine trying to live up to the example you set. With love and gratitude, Jennifer. I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. Then I looked out the window at the backyard where this had all started, where Jennifer had tried to burn away her past. The fire pit was cold now, unused. We didn't need it anymore. The truth was out, and we were all still standing. Stronger, even. That's the thing about truth. It might burn when it first comes out, might scorch everything it touches. But what grows in the aftermath is real. Solid. Built on bedrock instead of secrets and shame. I turned off the lights and headed to bed, thinking about Daniel. About the little boy Jennifer had held for 2 days 14 years ago, and the young man who now called me Grandma. About second chances and complicated families and the courage it takes to face the truth. I thought about my own Daniel, gone for so many years but still present in the values he'd instilled in our son. About how proud he'd be of Marcus, of the way he'd handled this impossible situation with grace and love. About how family echoes forward through generations, teaching us how to be human to each other, even when it's hard. And I thought about Jennifer, who'd tried to burn her past and instead found her future. Who'd been brave enough to be honest, vulnerable enough to risk rejection, strong enough to build something new from the ashes of her old secrets. I fell asleep that night feeling grateful. Grateful for my big mouth that couldn't mind its own business. Grateful for my son who chose love over judgment. Grateful for Daniel, both the man I'd lost and the boy we'd found. Grateful for Jennifer, who'd taught us all that it's never too late to tell the truth, to ask for forgiveness, to try again. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing. A text from Daniel. Good morning, Grandma Patricia. Thank you for dinner last night. Mom, meaning Susan, says I can invite you guys to my soccer game next Saturday. Will you come? I texted back immediately. Wouldn't miss it for the world. And I wouldn't. Because that's what family does. We show up, we witness each other's lives, we cheer from the sidelines and pick each other up when we fall. We tell the truth even when it's scary. We forgive even when it's hard. We love through the mess and the complications and the fear. That Tuesday afternoon when I saw smoke in the backyard and chose to investigate instead of ignoring it, I didn't know I was beginning the most important intervention of my life. I didn't know that stopping Jennifer from burning those papers would lead to healing for her, growth for Marcus, and a grandson for me. I just knew something was wrong, and I had to help. Sometimes that's all we can do. Notice when someone's drowning and throw them a lifeline. Refuse to let them destroy themselves in private. Stand beside them while they face their demons and hold their hand through the aftermath. I'm 62 years old, and I've learned that the best moments in life are usually also the hardest. The realest connections come from being honest about our broken places. The strongest families are built from people who've survived storms together and chose not to abandon ship. Jennifer didn't burn her past that day. She confronted it. And in doing so, she gave us all a future none of us had imagined, but all of us needed. A family knit together not just by blood and marriage, but by choice and courage and truth. That's the story of how I caught my daughter-in-law burning papers in the backyard, and how stopping her changed all our lives. Not because I was wise or because I had all the answers, but because I cared enough to ask questions, stubborn enough to push for honesty, and brave enough to stand with her while she faced her fears. And now, every Sunday when we gather around the table, I look at Daniel sitting between his two families, loved by all of us. And I know we did something right. We chose truth over comfort, connection over secrecy, love over fear. That's what I'll teach my grandchildren, both the ones I've known since birth and the one who came to us at 14. That family isn't about perfection, it's about showing up, being honest, loving people through their mistakes and their mess, standing in the smoke and ashes and helping each other rebuild. And sometimes it's about being nosy enough to ask questions when you see smoke in the backyard on a Tuesday afternoon. Because you never know what truth you might uncover, what life you might save, what family you might help heal. I'm just Patricia Holloway, a woman who couldn't mind her own business. And I've never been more grateful for that flaw in my entire life.